Good evening. This is Rudy Giuliani, and this is the Rudy Giuliani Show on Lindell TV and on X. And I'm in Palm Beach, but for some day, all day, I wanted to be in Greenland. I guess since watching the VP there this morning and remembering my trip to Iceland, where I learned something very important about Greenland and Iceland that we should all know if it's going to be a state. Greenland is Iceland, and Iceland is Greenland. Which means you get a lot of grass in Iceland, and you don't get very many, if any, in Greenland. One has a lot more colder conditions than the other. But on the other hand, Greenland is much, much bigger. And tactically, as you can see from the statements of Putin and others, and he was being rather, well, I don't know. I'd have to say, he gave away a lot in saying that he's going to contest America trying to get control of the Arctic Circle. Screw him, we already do. And second, he tried to pretend like Greenland wasn't that important. He said he understands why Trump wants it and Trump is serious. But, you know, Greenland is one thing, but controlling the Arctic Circle is the other. Like hell it is. You got Alaska and Greenland. You tell me how you're going to control the Arctic Circle. Well, in any event, that's what this is about. It's been about this for 50 or 60 years. Truman wanted to do this. So that, he was, by the way, he was a Democrat. So if the Democrats oppose this, there's no reason. This is not a partisan issue. I had a long conversation today with someone who was born in a country other than America, but is an American citizen now, and we were discussing. It was three of us. We were discussing our joint conclusion that sometimes we feel like it can't be true that the Democrats seem to hate this country as much as they do, or they never seem to be able to put the good of the country ahead of anything. We were talking about it specifically in the case of this guy Goldberg, right? So I'm going to only spend 1 minute on this topic because they spent too much time on it all week. So you get a thing on your cell phone, right? And all of a sudden you're in the middle of, let's say it happened to me 3 years ago, Ted. I want your comment on this. Suppose all of a sudden I picked up my cell phone, or you picked up yours and you handed it to me, and you said, Mayor, look what I got. We're in the middle of a conversation between Biden and Blinken, and Baby Sullivan and Trader Milley, and
right.
They're talking about some kind of action in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Now, I don't even have to think about what I would do.
Exactly.
I grab the phone from you right away. I say, Ted, just hold the phone right there. Call the White House.
Right.
If it was the White House, or if it wasn't, call Blinken.
Right.
Call the Secretary of State's office.
Right.
Tell them it's an emergency. Tell them it's me.
Yeah.
I know they hate me, but if they don't want to take it, they don't want to take it. And tell them that I have been given access to what appears to be a national security conversation, right. And I want to let them know that, and I'm happy to turn it all over to them.
Right.
Because if I have access to it, here's my fear. I could listen to that all day and not going to tell you. You have to kill me to get it. But if I have access to it, how did Goldberg know that Yemen didn't have access to it, or Yemen probably, or Iran rather, or Russia, or China,
or the Houthis,
or anybody else? So he made a choice. You're going to say, well, he's a reporter. He's also an American, right? I think. But don't you have to make a choice? What's more important? The national security of my country, or getting a newspaper article, or screwing Donald Trump, which maybe is both. I have any doubt which is more important. In my case, there wasn't very much more important than keeping Joe Biden out of the presidency. And then once he got there, to get him out. Would I have been tempted to keep listening so I could screw Joe Biden? No. I wouldn't even be tempted to do it, because my patriotism overwhelms my judgment. Always. When people would ask me, how do you go through this? How do you go through being sued, made bankrupt, your most precious possessions taken away from you, your grandfather's watch that was left just for you, things that you meant for your children, that your father wanted for your son, that your mother wanted for your daughter, that, oh, come on. Trying to take all your houses from you. I was down to not having a checking account for 2 months. And people said, why are you so happy? I said, I'm not happy. I'm joyous, not happy. Joy is different. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, guided by God and my conscience, and doing it for my country, which makes it even greater. Never a doubt. And hey, what I had to decide is probably more complex in the sense of, is it the right? This is simple. It's simple if you're an American. It's also simple if you're a scumbag. So what category does he fall into? There isn't any doubt about what I'm saying, by the way. A country that has too many people like that is a country that's going to fail. So that's enough. That's enough with him. Today we'll start with Greenland. And I think it is quite obvious now that the president has a very, very serious interest in Greenland. He's got a very serious interest in Greenland because it's a very serious situation. And I think Putin's kind of trying to figure out how to spin this, which I don't think he did very well. And he usually does do things very well in terms of spinning and diplomacy and stuff like that. He's a horrible person. And he's a horrible killer. And he's somebody we have to negotiate with, but very carefully. But I think Trump has him a little nervous about the Greenland thing. I think they're seeing a different Trump, too, than in the first time. They're seeing a Trump that speaks softly, but carries a gigantic stick. I mean, all Trump has, you know what Trump is doing with sanctions in Iran right now? Very quietly, not making a big deal out of it. He's starving them. He's pushing them very quickly into where they were when he left office, which is, and I would say very shortly, the protests will begin, if they haven't already. And Iran has been, and then we got a boost. It's the one thing he took over that was going in the right direction, but not in spite of Biden. And that is all of the proxies, all of the dodges that that Iran hides behind. All of them were taken away, right? So, you know, they've got Hezbollah, they've got Hamas, they've got the Houthis, they have Assad, they've got the backing of China and Russia. And then who came in? Bibi Netanyahu. Takes out Hamas, continues to take out Hamas, has Hezbollah run for the hills. Assad quits. And now the Houthis have announced, I guess they're suicidal, that they're going to continue to bomb Israel. Well, I mean, after a week of that telephone conversation, I think we got the point. We're going to continue to bomb Yemen. And I think our bombs are a hell of a lot more accurate than theirs are. They sent 2 bombs toward Tel Aviv. They caused a lot of consternation in Tel Aviv. I believe they didn't kill anyone because once again, they're I guess they were drones actually, were intercepted. So I mean, keep doing it. The faster we eliminate you, the better. You want to eliminate us, the faster we get rid of you. It's a shame, but I mean, if you have to deal with the world that way, you have to deal with the world that way. Could we listen to the vice president? Could we listen to the vice president upon his arrival at the space base? This is our space base in Greenland, and we're very familiar with Greenland. I mean, we occupied Greenland during the Second World War. But let's listen to Vice President Vance.
Our message is very simple. Yes, the people of Greenland are going to have self-determination. We hope that they choose to partner with the United States because we're the only nation on earth that will respect their sovereignty and respect their security, because their security is very much our security, as these brave Americans show.
Well, I think that's about as straight a message as you can give. The people of Greenland are not the people of Denmark. They're not the leadership of Greenland, and they're not European useless elites. They're mostly indigenous people, Inuit people, and those who have joined with them. And they look like they definitely want independence. And there's no question if the United States hadn't come along, maybe they'd have stuck with Denmark, but very, very close vote. Only reason is money. And they don't get very much from Denmark. Denmark treats them like they were a colony in the 18th century. They give them not even enough money to live on. And the reality is they haven't done anything to develop the place so that the people can support themselves. However, it is enormously valuable as a defense station country. It's secondly tremendously valuable in terms of minerals and things that we're going to need in the future, and that's not going to happen with Denmark. They don't have the resources to build this up. You know, it's a little bit like you have a small, ingenious company, and your company has discovered all of these rare minerals that are going to be of great value to the world over the next 10 years. You own it, you got it, but you're never going to be able to develop it. You're going to sit there until you die. Well, you partner with an investment fund, right? You partner with an investment fund or another company that's in this line of work. You try to get a really good deal and a share of the upside at the end. And now all of you benefit. That's what the United States is offering Greenland. Whether it be a possession, a state, an ally, or that's all, that all could be developed in stages. How about we begin with a very, 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 very close strategic alliance, which has possibilities of growing into ultimately statehood, if that was in the cards and they wanted it. We don't force you to become a state. America is not Russia. America is not the English Empire. America is not an empire. We don't conquer. Nebraska is not a state because we conquered it. Nebraska is a state because they wanted to be a state. It's true. Our people went to live there, but we didn't take it the way other colonies, were developed. And then, no matter how it came into our hands, you get to vote on whether you want to be a state. Silicon Valley now has taken a good look at this, and they are now extremely supportive. And even Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates are advocating for mining projects in Greenland. Elon Musk, of course, is very much in favor of it. Peter Thiel is very much in favor of it. Tom Dans, who's the former commissioner of the U.S. Arctic Research Commission, says Greenland offers abundant potential energy, strategic metals, and minerals in proximity to key U.S. population centers, all in a highly controllable environment. It's 1,800 miles from New York to Nuuk, which is the N-U-U-K, which is the capital of Greenland. And United Airlines is going to start a flight on Donald Trump's birthday and Flag Day. Direct flight from New York to Nuuk.
Can we go?
I'm hoping that we can get on that flight. And that is one of, there are ways to get there now, but this will be a daily flight from, of course, America's real capital, New York, to look, let's face it, the Inuits in Greenland have heard of the United States of America, But if they know of any city in the United
Okay,
States,
okay.
it'll be New York. So don't, I'm sorry. I am originally a New Yorker, and I am the one who coined the phrase New York is the capital of the world, which was ultimately, I was vindicated by Pope John Paul II.
That's right.
When he came to America and during a mass at Aqueduct Raceway, he said, "It is wonderful. Here I am in New York, the capital of the world."
Well,
Thank you, Pope.
well, Mayor, not to shift topics, but we have a very special guest who's joining us by phone. He's actually right now on a bus tour with the Republican Supreme Court candidate in the state of Wisconsin. So I believe we have on the phone Senator Ron Johnson. Senator,
Can you hear us?
So as we wait for that, of course, Mayor, what we're talking about is the Wisconsin Supreme Court race.
Right.
A big race that often, this is just a state Supreme Court race, but a lot of folks are going to look at this
No,
race.
there's a lot more than a state Supreme Court
That's right.
race. This is the Wisconsin State Supreme Court has switched back and forth a bit, and as it switched back and forth, the United States won back and forth. It is right now 4-3.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I can hear you now, Senator. How are you?
There you go. You always have to hit that mute button somewhere. So I'm doing well. How about you, Mr. Mayor?
I'm really interested in this race that you're working on, Senator. First of all, congratulations on everything that you do. You're just one of the best members of the Senate, and I think so many people admire you, and we're very honored to have you on the show. But tell us about this important race in Wisconsin where we just have to get Republicans out to vote.
Well, first of all, I hope you're doing well.
I am, Senator.
We have a fabulous candidate, Brad Schimmel. He's been working his tail off for the last 16 months. I'm on a bus tour with him now all weekend. We probably have way more than a dozen stops over the next couple of days. But this is classic. We've got a judge, somebody who will apply the law, running against a radical leftist who will alter the law, who will be a super legislature. And I was with him earlier this afternoon on our last stop, and he told a story about her entire campaign has been nothing but lies. And he told one story in particular about a veteran who, got in, PSTD, turned to the bottle, had a domestic abuse situation where the most abuse was he forced his wife back into a car. Neighbors saw it, called the police. He spent a few days in jail. And Susan Crawford is plastering this guy's face all over Wisconsin, talking about this domestic abuser that Brad Schimmel let off the hook. Well, a year later at trial, the 3 days in jail turned the man's life around. His wife, basically at the trial said that was probably the best thing that ever happened to him. He went to AA, he got clean, he's a new man. And so, of course, Brad Schimmel didn't sentence him. But instead, Susan Crawford is using this veteran, this one of the finest among us who had a problem, solved the problem, got redemption, and lies about Schimmel and tries to destroy this veteran as well. So this race is about dishonesty. It's about electing a judge who will apply the law versus a radical leftist who lies through her teeth and doesn't care who she destroys in trying to obtain that kind of power. And of course, the radical left billionaires that are supporting her, they couldn't care less either. All they want is power. They want those 2 congressional seats because Susan Crawford will help redistrict, and probably we might lose the majority. We'll overturn voter ID, and any election integrity in Wisconsin will probably be thrown to the curb. We may never have a chance at the 10 electoral vote. So this is crucial that we win this Supreme Court race. And again, we got a candidate that's working his tail off and a person of real integrity.
You also have at risk the law that you were all very instrumental in, Governor Walker, in passing to control collective bargaining by public employees, and it's hugely popular in your state. And I don't know if people realize that this woman is bound to try to overturn that.
Oh yeah, she absolutely would overturn. They call it Act 10. It's has literally saved Wisconsin cities and municipalities and townships billions of dollars. Uh, for sure, at least hundreds of millions at least, and they'll just up the cost again because the teachers unions will take charge. What's interesting is once teachers had an option of whether to pay the dues the teachers union or not, they chose not to. Amazing what freedom does.
Well, it couldn't be a better time to get people to focus on this, because it does seem to me that there is a concerted action on the part of Democrat judges to be the last bastion against the reforms that President Trump is trying to make for us to bring us back to being a constitutional state. I mean, they've tried everything else, but something like 95% of the injunctions were entered by Democrat judges.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is Eric Holder's project. This has been George Soros's project. Hiring radical left DAs, putting judges in place that will look the other way on crime and that will legislate from the bench. Their ideology is not popular enough to win at the election booth, right? That they can only impose their ideology. They can only gain their power through that third branch of government, which, let's face it, these judges are exceeding their constitutional authority. The Supreme Court has to step in and rein these radical left judges in. We can't tolerate our democracy can't tolerate, our republic can't tolerate these nationwide injunctions by one district judge. As you say, 95% of our generally radical leftists.
Well, Senator, it's just an honor to talk to you and to think you've given up your weekend. And I mean, you work you work 95 hours a week, because I've worked with you and I know that already. And here you are, a senator with tremendous responsibilities, one of the leaders, and you realize the importance of this judgeship. I mean, and how you can help, and God bless you for so many things.
Well, listen, appreciate you highlighting this. President Trump's weighed in. Elon Musk is doing a lot, just trying to keep up with the George Soroses and the Pritzkers of the world.
How can people help out if they're outside of, or in Wisconsin or outside of Wisconsin? How can they help?
Well, I'm sure they can send contributions always, but Wisconsin just have to vote. This is next couple of days, the last day of early voting. Now it's getting down to Tuesday. Listen, our last Supreme Court candidate lost, only got 800,000 votes. President Trump got 1.7 million. That's 900,000 people that are available. I want to make sure that everybody that voted for President Trump realize how important this race is and get out. I'd love to see Brad Schimel get 1.3, 1.4, 1.5 million votes. It's possible. And again, it helps that people like you are willing to highlight this over the airwaves.
Well, we're willing to do it, and we'll get a lot more to do it. And this is so important. I mean, in many ways, it's important to the whole country, as we found out how important these courts are, and that they be honest and fair and just decide it based on the law. So thank you again, Senator.
Well, God bless you. Take care.
God bless. Well, there's a real American hero. We'll be talking a lot more about Senator Johnson as we have, but he's one of the few United States senators who really stood up for President Trump at a time when everybody's running for the hills. He and a couple of others. This is a man that I have enormous respect for. And I also think it's remarkable that he's spending his time. Well, I don't. Knowing him, I know it's not remarkable. So what we were talking about, we talked about it yesterday and a few other times, but this is a race for the state Supreme Court of Wisconsin. Now you say, well, why is that important? It's important because the Supreme Court of Wisconsin entered an illegal decision that allowed Biden to win Wisconsin when he didn't. Simple as that. Now, I know people are going to say, Giuliani's talking about a false, like hell I am. I can show you the report that was done by the retired Supreme Court justice. I can show you how 4 different ways Trump won Wisconsin and he was cheated. And then it goes up to the Supreme Court of Wisconsin, and there's a decision that has to be made that is so damn clear that a 12-year-old child would understand the logic of it. You got to preserve the envelopes on a mail-in ballot in order for it, and the signature in order for it to be valid, in order for it to be counted. It's got to be kept, and they destroyed all of them. They destroyed all of them, and all of them in areas where you would be taking votes from Donald Trump. And the law says they've got to be invalidated, and we have to have a new election, and the law is clear as hell. And the Supreme Court decided based on a principle I never heard of. It would be too hard to do. That's the too hard to do new principle that no one, that certainly doesn't have any basis in Blackstone or any place else. You know where it has a basis? Probably your basis for that would be Boss Tweed, the crooks that ran New York with the mafia and Chicago, Democrats who did that. That's where it would have a basis. So that's what's at stake here, including this collective bargaining law that's so important. What Governor Walker accomplished was he made it possible so that public workers could decide whether they wanted to be part of a union or contribute to a union. In the past, the government just took it right out of their salary. You work for the Public Records Office, you belong to the Public Records Union. No, you didn't. You had to belong to the Public Records Union, and they took the dues out of your salary, even if the guy running the Public Records Office Union was the biggest crook in Milwaukee. And Walker got the Constitution changed. They've tried to defeat it 3 different times. They failed. And now they want to put together a crooked court to do it. And this judge is committed to doing it. And that's where they're paying so much money for. That's where the money's coming from the unions, so that they can once again con the workers and treat them like the slaves that they treat them like. Collective bargaining is not imperiled. The unions are imperiled. Maybe you don't want to be a member of a union, but in Wisconsin, before we had Republicans running it, you didn't have that choice because it's not America. You're working on the same thing as in China or what Russia was like, or you're a member of the union, pal. I don't want to be a member of the union. Yes, well, you don't have to be a member of the union. We're going to take your money anyway. I mean, that's a gangster tactic. That's why Democrats do it. Well, that's only one of many. As long as we're talking about elections, there's 2 Florida primaries that are of some importance. Well, first of all, what happened with Elise Stefanik, right? Elise Stefanik is one of the leaders of the House of Representatives and probably one of the leaders in my former state of New York. She is just an enormously popular representative in what we call upstate New York, and of course she's part of the House leadership. You saw her many times perform. She's a brilliant person, and the president named her to the UN. And as time went by, I think the president. I'm going to tell you what. This is just Rudy saying it, not the president. I think the president realized that the margin in the House was going to be. I don't think he realized it would be that tight. So he took a couple of people. He took Gates, and Gates had to drop out. He took Walz, and Walz left an opening as a result of that. And he took Elise. So now we're down to what, 3, Ted? Is it 3? The margin is 3?
I believe so.
Or maybe 4.
Let me look.
So
Elise is now going back. So we got.
So Elise, so she is there. No, she's in the margin right now.
Oh, they already
would have gotten worse if she left.
Right.
So she doesn't go. She remains, and this is a great sacrifice by her in the sense that I would imagine she was enormously excited about being the UN ambassador. It puts you in a different category, in a different role. It gives you a tremendous amount of foreign policy experience. You ever want to run for senator or something else? Or now, I coldly look at it this way: where she is now is much more important than being ambassador to the UN. As far as I'm concerned, we don't even need an ambassador to the UN. It doesn't do much good. We lose every vote. They are basically a Chinese Islamic extremist run group. That's where they vote. And not going to be much different because more than enough of those states are completely criminal.
3-seat majority
In
the House. Thanks, Ed.
They were one of our biggest criminal problems in New York City, by the way. I don't know why they cover that up, but next time Bernie's on, I'll have him bring one of his reports on the numerous crimes committed by the bums who come from many of those countries, because many of those countries are, they're crooked, completely crooked, completely 100% dishonest. And when the people who they send here, who do you think they send here? Priests and rabbis? No, they send their political people who think they can make a big score here in New York. Well, I think she's much better off where she is. So now in the primaries, the one for Mike Walz's district is the closer one. Right?
That's right.
And that one is explained where it's sort of in middle Florida. That's where I would describe it.
The center.
It's about 3 hours north of us here in Palm Beach.
From the East Coast into the central, you're right.
Yeah, but it begins on the East Coast and goes into the center of the state. I guess the main city is Dayton.
Daytona Beach, I would say.
Where the race is, right?
Yeah, that's right. Maybe we can bring it up under topic 7. We have a video. It kind of shows the map of the two under topic 7 there. We didn't number that cut, unfortunately, tonight. But that's right, Mayor.
Now, this is a race. This is an area that Trump won big. But of course, a couple of things happen in a race like this. Number one is the turnout, particularly at this time of year, similar to Wisconsin, is minuscule compared to the turnout in a presidential race. That's not a particularly helpful map.
That is Pensacola. You're right. It should have been zoomed out.
And that's Gates's district.
Yeah. So that's the Panhandle. I guess we're going to zoom out here. Just very slowly.
That's the Gates. That's the district right there.
That's the one.
So now if we can open that up a little, you'll get an idea of where it is.
We'll do that. We'll work on that for you, Mayor.
But in any event, that's it. That's the district. It's a Republican district. It's a district that Randy Fine, who is the Republican candidate, Randy. Let me make sure I get this right.
Randy Fine.
The Randy Fine, who's a Republican candidate, should win handily. However, Joshua Weil has spent an enormous amount of money. The GOP has kind of said he's going to win, but they're not sure, or they're not sure about the number. He is underperforming the generic ballot, whatever that means. But he had had trouble fundraising, but he's recently raised a lot of money, and it looks like there it is. It looks like he's going to make it, but if you can send him something to Randy Fine, and we'll see if we can get you before the end of the show how you do that. It might help at the very last minute for another ad, another group of people getting out to vote. The election is on Tuesday, and maybe we can wake Republicans up and say, he's got the votes, just go get out there and vote. The Gates district, which is in the Panhandle, which you saw earlier, Jimmy Petronas seems to have a very, very strong lead there. And although there's always the issue of they'll probably underperform Trump, and the Democrats will say, "Oh my goodness, look, Trump's not on the ballot." It doesn't mean he can't bring people in, but they're not going to get the same. If this is a question of turnout, nobody turns out voters like Donald Trump. It's his great hidden strength as a candidate, and it's the reason why he always underperforms in polls. It's because he overperforms in elections. All those rallies that people make fun of, I'm the biggest proponent of those rallies. I thought the loss of those rallies during pandemic time helped to make 2020 too close, or close enough to steal. I think the presence of those rallies in 2024 made it too big to steal. So Trump's ability to draw when he's on the ballot is tremendous. His ability to do it, I mean, and he's doing ads for him, of course, just as a secondary matter, is never as strong for anyone. But if anybody can bring somebody in, it's him. So we'll keep watching it. We'll watch it over the weekend, and if there's anything important that comes up that we think is that people can help from all around the country on either those two races in Florida or the Wisconsin race, we'll just come on specially and bring you up to date on it. One looks real strong, the other looks okay, but either one of them can be affected by turnout, and both of them will be kind of spun if they get less than Trump's vote. Of course, they're going to get less than Trump's vote and win. But you got to be ready for everything. You got to be ready for everything in politics, because anything can come up. We have the largest budget deficit, the largest debt in the history of this country. It's on its way to eating up our budget. We will be paying, if we're not already, more interest on what we owe than to defend ourselves. And that's telling, because China has passed us with regard to the Navy, and they're on their way to passing us with regard to everything else. Trump is trying to reverse that. Trump may reverse that for a period of time, but if the debt grows and we don't fix it, we will not be able to do that forever. And then we will be a country that is that's hanging out there and can be overcome by a powerful country with so many people and so much potential. On the other hand, if we can solve this problem and we can responsibly make use of the incredible amount of resources that God has given us and not be wasteful about it, it'll be impossible to stop us. And here's the worst part of it. We're going to give you some examples now, and every single penny is important. And there's no question there's waste, and there's no question there's abuse, and there's no question there's inefficiency, and da-da-da-da-da. Biggest problem in our country, which is a terrible problem to have, is the corruption that goes on, particularly in government contracting at the federal, state, and local level. The kickbacks in New York are to the point of sinful because they're the main cause of a budget in New York State that's 2.5 almost times the budget of Florida, because there's a lot more graft money in New York than in Florida. And as Elon Musk is going through this, and we heard him last night, they are discovering an enormous amount of waste. But it's always good to give a few simple examples. And I know each one of them doesn't sound like enough, but after a while, as Everett Dirksen says, if you start adding it up, and we start getting to what Musk thinks he can get to in 130 days, which is $1 trillion, we just cut the debt in half. That's a different debt. That's a debt we might be able to overcome by growth. And if we start that momentum, it's going to continue. I mean, the last time we did any kind of cutting like this was under Ronald Reagan, which tells me there's a lot of easy fruit to pick off the vine. There was for me when I cut New York's budget. Do you know, within 3 years, I was able to produce a surplus. I took over a budget that was over $1 billion out of balance halfway through the year, which means it's $2 billion out of balance. and was able to cut enough so that we not only balanced it, we had to, but we started to develop gigantic surpluses. And I had to come up with a strategy for the surplus. Otherwise, the city council would have wasted it all on me. So I'll tell you the strategy for the surplus when we get a surplus. Right now, let's look at a few of these agencies. And this is very familiar to me because this is what I used to have to do in the Reagan administration for the Justice Department. We were cutting all the time, and we were not subjected to the maximum cut because of law enforcement, but we still had a cut. You look at HHS. Kennedy's workforce has already shrunk from 82,000 to 62,000. That's fabulous. 10,000 workers opted for the buyout. 10,000 workers were removed. That's 20,000. And the positions, now even more important, on the theory that we have expounded to you several times from the expert who wrote for the Wall Street Journal. I don't want to take it as my own, but I used to do it also. It makes a great deal of sense. They have consolidated HHS from 28 divisions into 15. Now, what the theory is if you're going to cut government and you want it to work long term, which is what has to happen to get rid of the debt, you got to take away the position, not just the person. Because if you keep the position, somebody else right after you'll come in and, but if they got to recreate the position, and it just makes it a lot harder. So Robert Kennedy did this very, very expertly in an area where you often will get, nothing can be cut. Health and human, nothing can be cut. Nothing can be cut. Nothing can be cut. Now look at that savings. That's a $1.8 billion savings annually. That's, in a decade, that's a $15 billion savings. So, and the important thing is, it's not only huge, it's a great, I know how this happens with OMB. Other people come in, other secretaries, we can't cut. And then the OMB director or the guy who's in charge of like we had a special group in charge of the Justice Department. They show you, they say, well, Kennedy was able to do it in the area of health. And you can't do it here in this agency. Gee, Bill, maybe if you can't do it, we'll do it for you. That used to be the Reagan trick and mine. I'd say, I want a 10% cut. Oh, we can't cut 10%. I said, that's okay. I'd call up my OMB director. I'd say, go over and take a look at the XYZ agency and get me 15%. And they would say, but you said only 10%. I said, no, you didn't read the directive carefully enough. I said, you can do 10% voluntarily. But if I have to come in and use up OMB that could be used cutting somewhere else, I got to charge you another 5%. This is so important. I can't emphasize how important, how brilliant it is, and how needed it is for our country. As a general rule, in the three branch type government we used to have, we now have a 4-branch government, and we have a Supreme Court, some members of whom have no idea that we have a Constitution. And we've got, hundreds of Democrat judges who make up the Constitution. But when we used to have a 3-branch government, and this dynamic still works, there's nobody that cares about rational spending but the president. If he does. If he doesn't, he's like Biden, we're sunk. If he's like Obama, we're sunk. The president has to see it either because he's smart and principled or because he's a good politician and he realizes he's the one that's going to pay for the overspending. Why do I say that? A legislature is built to spend money politically. A state senator, a United States senator, a representative, an assembly member in a legislature, they get reelected by getting things for their people. Now, unless they're super talented political people who can do remarkable things in reforming government and making the community better, and there are only a few of those, the bread and butter of being reelected is how many projects did I get? What did I get for you? It's not getting programs for the people cut. Every program in your district can be the most important program. So that pressure is tremendous. And unless you end up with a group like in the House of Representatives now, who is able to see principle and long term and willing to look at some cutting, but even there, it's not going to be what it should be. Now you say, well, the federal government, the federal branches of government, the executive branch will do it. No, it won't. The executive agencies want to spend as much as they can also. State Department can come up with unbelievable needs for spending money. The Defense Department, of course, has to spend more money. The Justice Department, you want us to catch more criminals? We got to spend more money. Treasury Department, you want us to collect more fees, taxes? You want us to have a better idea of the economy? We need many more people. HHS, Health and Human, you want us to be safe and healthy? We need more people. It's always people. And they also, don't forget, if we start talking about smaller governments, the bigger your empire, the more important you are. I got an agency. I mean, look at Kennedy. He had an agency of 82,000. It's down to 62,000. Oh my goodness, I'm not so important anymore. So, luckily, we have somebody like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. that looks at principle and on what's important. So the cutting has to come from the president and his OMB director. And they got to be tough as hell, and they have to understand human nature, and they have to know how to rein in their friends, because these cabinet members are their friends. I mean, they'll come in and they'll try to charm you and explain to you, well, this is the most important program there ever was. But you've got to outthink them. Like, we're cutting you 10%. Give us your 10%. You can find it better than we can. But if you don't, and our animals come in, it's just we're just going to go pick the first 15% we find, and then you figure out how to keep your agency together. And if we really go wild, we might find 20%. So the idea of attacking Musk for what he's doing in probably the most responsible way we've ever done it, or even businesslike and scientific, is ridiculous. This is as necessary as building our military so that we can be stronger than China and Russia. Because if our economy remains the strongest in the world, if we can have budget discipline, given the size of our country, compared to a world in which budget discipline is missing most places, if we dominate the world now, we'll dominate it twice as much as we become more efficient and more capable of using our money wisely. And when I say dominate the world, I do not mean to dominate the world for the cheap reasons that a lot of our countries in the past did. America never sought an empire. It doesn't want an empire. America is much more characterized by Colin Powell's description of the men and women who fought in the Second World War. Yep, we won. We freed Europe. And unlike any other country ever before, we didn't ask for land. All we asked was a place to peacefully bury our dead, knowing how we had served the cause of human decency and peace, and better than anyone or any group of people ever. You and your children, and your children's children, the more we can spread peace in the world, we'll live ever increasingly better lives than we've lived. And isn't that our objective? As a nation, to create a more perfect union, and as a family and as a human being, to create better lives for our friends, our family, and our children. Isn't that the greatest thing you can do in life? If it isn't, you probably should go see a doctor and have somebody work on your narcissism. or maybe a priest or rabbi would be even better, because I always have to remind us, we want to accomplish all this, we got to bring God back into America. We've got to realize where our strength comes from. So HHS knocked out a lot. And if you stick with us as we move over to X on America's Mayor Live, I'll give you a couple of the other ones that were similar to this. And then the big picture that Musk has for how to get us to a place where we're going to be so economically dominant that, that you just won't be able to contest with us. And therefore, we'll be able to keep the world free and peaceful, and keep the ambitions of an atheistic, murderous communist dictatorship like China under control. It's so important that you have the economic base to do that. How did we win the Second World War? We won the Second World War because, as Admiral Yamamoto said, they made the mistake of awaking the sleeping giant. Yeah, the sleeping giant was our military, but it was our whole country that entered into probably our most massive and our quickest reindustrialization in history. Rosie the Riveter. Everybody was building tanks, ships, planes, guns, ammunition. All of a sudden, the biggest war machine in the country was developed in 6 months. Because when we're challenged, we are without any doubt the most motivated people in the world and the most creative. And that is something that, when you have a leadership like this, it comes out even more. This is a leadership that doesn't talk about making you dependent. It talks about you being able to take care of yourself. And it tries to gear everything in that direction. That's a group of people that love people, not a group of people who want to dominate them. And I hope you see the difference, because it is energizing. For me, this is probably one of the greatest periods in our history. And maybe the greatest period I've ever lived through. I can't tell you, I can't judge our entire history. I imagine the revolutionary period was a pretty damn exciting period to live in. But this is one of the most exciting periods in our history, particularly since what we've been through. And to me, a complete vindication from my point of view of the decisions that I made, and an ability to say it was all worth it. So you keep sticking with us. We'll keep telling you the things that nobody else is telling you, and focusing on the races that you need to be focused on to make sure that this continues to go in the right direction. We slip up. I'm afraid we slip up, and don't pay attention, and they're going to come back and try to take it all, because there is truly evil. Not all of them, but at the core, there's a certain amount of evil intention that I can't even accept. Whenever I confront it, I say to myself, this can't be true. People can't be this evil. When I see these judges putting out, there were a couple of judges in Democratic Massachusetts that put out people who rape 14-year-old girls. I just say to myself, well, what's wrong with you? Do you like rape? What happened to Democrats? Did Satan invade your soul? Well, I don't know. That's probably way too much, and it almost doesn't matter, because it almost doesn't matter why they do it. The person comes out and rapes 5 more times before you catch him again. So we got the right program. We're going in the right direction. We want you to have a wonderful weekend. We're going to break in if we have to let you know what's going on in those races or anything else. Who knows what happens, right? The weekend is not time off, certainly not for this president, right? Or for us, right? And it's usually when we get our best information. So, right? So, again, God bless all of the people who are afflicted by war right now, and those who are in need. And let's pray to God this Sunday for prayer of thanks for having delivered us just recently. And God bless America.